Hi guys, today I am going to show you how you can create your own version of Jupyter Notebook. I have named it Pluto Notebook. You can see the final product here. I can do similar operations like in Jupyter Notebook. For example, I can do simple expression like 1 plus 1. I can do complex operations like importing a library and do some mathematical operations. Also, you can see it will also tell me the error. So let's start. So how we are going to make it? This is a very simple thing. Like we have a client that will send a post request to a Python Flask server, and we will be sending a command, and the command will be a string. For example, here it is written print hello world. So print hello world will be a command that will be provided to the Flask server via a HTTP post request, and the Flask server will execute that print hello world command, and it will send the result to the client. So this is similar to how Jupyter Notebook works. So we have to create the server first. So let's start by creating the server. For that, you have to make sure to install Flask. So install Flask. You can pip install Flask using pip install Flask. So let's start. I have already installed Flask. So let's create a file named app.py, and I am going to create a very simple Flask server that will take a command, a JSON that will have a key called command, and the value will be the command I have to evaluate. And after evaluating it, I will send that value to the client. Here I'll be using Postman for the client, and after that I will use Chrome for the same. So let's import Flask. I am creating a very standard application. Now I am creating a route called evaluate. This is the route I will send a post request, and I will pass that JSON with that command string, and it will evaluate that string and it will send me the result. This is the JSON. So I have to get the JSON from the request. Now I will extract the command from the JSON data. As you can see, the key is the command. So I am extracting the command. Now for the time being, to check if the server is okay, let's send OK. Now we will run the app. At port 8080. Now it seems good. Let's run it. Okay, so forgot to mention the method. The method should be post. Seems good. So this is the route that I have to put the post request with this JSON data. Now let's run the server to check if everything is okay. It should send me the result okay. Okay, it seems I have not saved the file. Okay, let's run. Okay, server started at the port 8080. So I am using Postman to test the API, and I am sending a JSON data in the body named command with a key command, and the value is a sample value, so it should send me the result okay. Yeah, it is working. So our Flask server is working fine. So now we have to implement the logic to execute that command. Whatever code it is getting, I have to execute it and send the result to the client. For this purpose, I am going to use two built-in methods called exec and eval. So both are used to evaluate or execute a certain code. You can pass a string or a code object. Here you can see I am executing simple expression, but a simple expression like this exec does not return any value, whereas if I try with eval with a simple expression like this, it will send me the value. Here I am going to use Python AST library, that is abstract syntax tree, to parse the code string into AST. So let's write a code string, a simple code string. Let's define a variable and assign it 1. Let's print that variable, and let's declare a function also. Now the code string is declared. Let's parse that code string. I am importing the AST module. So it returns a AST.module object, and if I see the body, it is a list of nodes. So you can see the first one is AST.assign, that is I am assigning a value to a variable A. then it is the expression print a, then last one is a ast.function def. Now obviously I can execute the code string, and it is the one is basically coming from print a because it is printing to the standard output. Now the problem is, you can see Jupyter Notebook, you can write 1 plus 1, it gives you 2. But if I do the exec method on 1 plus 1, it does not return a value. Obviously, you can store that value temporarily with a variable and you can print that. But the simplest one is to use eval. So what we have to check, we have to go through this module object and the body, and we have to check for expressions. So wherever we see a expression, we will use eval method, and wherever we don't see a expression, we will use exec method. So let's try that. And one thing I forgot to mention, I already mentioned that wherever there is a print statement, it does not return a value. Basically print return none, but the value that print is taking, it goes to the console. So it evaluates that value and the value goes to the standard output. So we have to make something to get that value from the standard output, and we have to store it so that we can send that value to the client. So let's do that. I am iterating over the body, and I will check if this is an expression, then I will use eval, and if this is not an expression, I will use exec method. So let's parse the code string. So code is basically a string representing the Python code. I am parsing it. Now I am iterating over the body, that is the each node I am iterating, and I am checking if it is an expression. Then if the type of the node is the expression, I will use eval. For the time being, I'm using pass, and if this is not the case, I have to use exec. Now let's implement when this is expression. Now we can see this is an object of type ast.expr. So first thing we have to do, we have to compile it to a code object, because eval takes a string or a code object. So let's first compile this to a code object, and the mode is eval. Now when I am trying to compile for eval, it expects an expression. If I print the type of the second node, the node it is of type ast._ast.expr. So I have to convert it to expression, otherwise it will send me an error. So let's convert it to expression. Now that I have compiled it, let's use eval, and I am giving it the global variables, so it will execute the command in global scope, so that whenever you are using it from the Chrome browser, in each session the variables are kept alive. Otherwise, if you are using local variables, these variables will live only for this session, for this function scope. But I am using global scope, so that I can use the variables in other cells. Now we have done with eval. Let's do the similar thing for non-expression. Similarly, we can do that for exact. We have to compile it to a code object for exact. Now, if you are compiling it for exact, it expects a module, ast.module. But you can see these first and the last node are ast.assign and ast.functionDef. So you have to convert it to ast.module. Otherwise, if you are compiling for exact, it will raise the error. So I am converting it to ast.module. You can read more about it from the official documentation. I am not going into deep here. Now exact doesn't return a value. It may happen that there are print statement inside the code string, but it anyway give the value to the standard output. So for the time being, let's just print the result and check if it is working fine or not. So let's give it a code string. Let's use that code string only. You can see the result is returning 1 from okay. The none is coming from the print. Basically, print returns none. So let's do one thing. We will check if the result is none. Then we don't want it, because none is not so much useful. So let's check if the result is not none. Then only print the result. So now you can see it evaluates to 1, but it does not give me the none, that is the return value of print. Let's do a function also, function call also. Yeah, it is working fine. It seems working fine. Let's do a little bit more operations like simple expressions. It should return a value, because for this you can see these are expressions. So eval should take this up. Yeah, it is working. You can see eval is taking this up and the result is printed. Now you can see the print is giving the output to the standard output. So we have to collect it and we have to basically provide it to the user. So what we'll do, we can do something like we can redirect the standard output, the data to a string IO, and we can read that string IO once we are done with executing all the operations, and we can send that data to the user. So let's do that. So I am using context lib for this purpose. So it has redirect standard error and redirect standard out. So it will basically redirect the standard output to whatever we define. So here I will use a string IO for this. So I am declaring a basically virtual file. Now as long as I am executing this code string, all the output to the standard std out will go to the file f. So wherever I am using a print statement, it will not go to the console but the string IO. Now I am out of this context, so now I can just read that and send it back to the user. So let's try it if it works. Yeah, it is working. So let's copy and paste it in our server. Let's create debug true so that every time we change something, we don't have to restart the server manually. And we have to import the libraries also. Okay, forgot to import other library AST, and let's do one thing. Let's separate the standard libraries from the other libraries, and when we are executing the code, it may happen that sometimes some error happens, for example zero division error. So let's wrap it with a try catch block, and we are already inside the redirect. So if we print that exception, it will go to the string IO. So user, whenever we are sending that back to the client will also be able to see the error. So for the time being, I am using a very simple error. You can obviously show the traceback, but for the time being, I am just taking the name of the type of the error and the error string. And anyway, you are using a print function, so it will automatically add a new line character. So don't have to put new line character. So let's get that name of this error. So what type of, for example, zero division error, name error, something like that. Let's put a colon here for beauty, you can say. Yeah, it seems okay. So let's run it and and check, and instead of sending OK, let's return the evaluate code method. Okay, so let's run it, and I hope it should work. Let's check it. Yeah, it is sending me a name error because A is not defined. That is perfectly fine, and it is already working nice. So let's assign a value to A, and it should return a null string. Yeah, that is fine. Now let's print A. Great, it is working as expected. So let's try something else. Yes, so I am dividing by 0, so it is sending me 0 division error. So now it is working fine. We are sending the command, and Flask server is able to use that command and evaluate the command string and sending me back the result. So now what we will do, right now we are using Postman for the client. We can make a similar Chrome browser like client, like a Jupyter Notebook, you can see here. So this is very simple. We can just use the Flask server to serve a page where user can interact with the server. So I will follow the standard folder structure. You can learn more in the Flask documentation. So let's create a templates folder where the HTML files will be kept. This is standard folder structure. You can read more about from the Flask documentation. Let's create index.html. Let's create a static folder also where the style.css and script.js and other static files will be kept. Let's create style.css and script.js. I have already made this HTML file, so I will not make it again. And also let us define the default route to serve the index.html file, and it will be GET request obviously. And I need a render template. Okay. Now the route is weird, so let's add some content to index.html. I have already made this file index.html file, so I'll just copy and paste. It is very simple page. It has some cells that I will describe later, and some text area and some buttons to do some actions. I'll do some styles, custom styles, and a custom script. So let's check if it is working. Let's go to localhost. Yeah, it is working. As you can see, it is a very simple HTML page. It has a div element, that is nav, just showing the name of Bluetooth notebook. It has two buttons. One is for adding a new cell and one is for running the current cell. And after that, it has a cell list that has a children called cell, and each children has a ID. So whenever you are clicking the button, add button, the JavaScript will add a new cell, or it append a child to the cell list div, and it will increment the ID basically with +1 something like that. So you can check any particular cell with the ID, for example 1, 2 or 3. Now the run cell will not work because we have not all implemented yet. Now one thing you have to notice is that there are two global variables. One is selected cell number and one is a max cell number. So selected cell numbers is the current cell ID which you have selected. So if you select a different cell, it will update the selected cell number variable. So if we are selecting 1, it will update it to 1. If we are selecting 3, so anytime you can check the selected cell number variable to, for example, if you are clicking on run cell, so by that you will be able to know which cell code you have to run. And the max cell is the current maximum value. So if you are using add cell, it knows that it has to add a max cell +1 for the next cell ID. Cool. Now we have not implemented this JavaScript file, this command handler that will basically give some functionality to the run command button. So what it will do, it will basically take the text from the text area, it will send it back to the server, and it will get the response, and it will put the response inside this cell div. Basically, if you look at the cell div, it has three components. One is this h4 tag, then the text area, then this p tag. So p tag current now it is empty, but basically we will put the response in the p tag. So for example, I am putting some gibberish value, it will go to this p tag. So let's create the command handler file. I have already written it, so let's copy and paste. Now this is run cell. So basically, whenever you are clicking the run cell button, what it will do, it will take the text from the text area. This is the text area. So it will take the text and it will store it in the text variable. Then it will disable the run button. So for example, you are running that particular cell, it will stop you from running another cell. So basically this execution should be sequential. For example, you are declaring a variable, then if you are running a loop and it takes time, so you cannot run the another loop. So you can implement a different way, but it's a very simplistic way to implement. You can use some stack or something like that, but it's a very simplistic way. Now I'll do a fetch request, post request. I'll provide a JSON with a key command, and the command will be the text that is in the text area, and I will get the response, and I will put that response to the p tag. So this is the third child, so 0, 1, 2. So I will get that element from the selected cell number, and I will put that inside the text, inner text. So I'll basically put the response here. So hope it should work. Let's try. Let's save it. Yeah, now I will also enable the button as soon as I get the response. So let's try. Let's try something like 1 plus 1. Yeah, it is working perfectly fine. I have got the result, that is 2. Let's try another one. So let's try a very cool thing. Let's do something like infinite recursion. So it should print maximum recursion depth error. So let's see if it works. Yeah, it is working. So guys, that's it. I hope you have enjoyed. You learned something. This is a very simplistic version called Pluto Notebook. It is very fun to make, and in the way you'll be able to learn a thing or two from like AST and exec and eval methods. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you.